Welcome to Unadulterated Adultery Confessions. Hi, I'm Martin. I'm 67, and if I'm being honest, I've spent the last few years perfecting the art of not giving a damn. That's what losing your wife does to you. That's what burying half of your identity can do. So, no, I wasn't in the mood for conversation when I boarded that bus in Oregon. I had my book, my playlist, and a seat I was praying would stay empty. Just me and the slow hum of tires on asphalt for the next 15 hours. No noise, no strangers, no stories. But of course, the seat beside mine wasn't empty for long. She arrived like a gust of wind. Boots clicking, scarf half on, half off, like she was in the middle of telling life itself to calm down. She looked to be in her early 60s, graceful, striking, and carrying the kind of confidence that doesn't ask for attention but effortlessly earns it. "Sorry," she muttered, sliding in beside me before I could even look up. The guy behind me was trying to explain crypto to a nun. I blinked. She turned, looked me straight in the eyes, and grinned. "Hi, I'm Celia. Don't worry, I only talk to strangers when I'm bored." I blinked again. "Then I guess I'm at your mercy." She laughed, loud. Not obnoxious, just unfiltered, like someone who had nothing to prove. "Wow, you've got that dry professor energy," she said, pointing at me with her thumb. "Retired?" "Guilty." I nodded. "Literature. 40 years. Mostly Hemingway, occasionally annoyed students." "I knew it," she said, leaning back. "You've got that 'I once taught Othello and lost sleep over it' look." I chuckled. "And what about you? Serial chatterbox or professional icebreaker?" "Nurse. Retired. Just ended a 40-year marriage and figured I'd drive into the desert before I started screaming into a pillow." I stared at her. "That's direct." She shrugged. "I'm too old to do polite small talk, Martin." I hadn't told her my name yet. She smiled, slyly. "You were holding your boarding pass when I sat down. Martin Lowell. You grip things like a man used to being in control." I raised a brow. "And you analyze strangers like someone who spent a lot of time keeping other people alive." Her smile faded a little, just for a second. "Touché," she said softly. The bus rumbled on, and so did we. She asked what books I secretly hated. I told her Fitzgerald was overrated. She gasped like I'd insulted her firstborn. "Okay, well, the men in New York are dramatic, too. So I guess it tracks." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "Dramatic?" I asked. "You sound like you've dated a few." She sighed, dramatically flipping her hand. One tried to sell me a startup pitch over brunch. Another asked me to define emotional labor on a first date. The third only communicated in memes. Memes! Martin, actual memes. He sent me a SpongeBob gif instead of texting goodnight. I shook my head. "That's not romance. That's psychological warfare." She laughed again. "Exactly. And don't get me started on men who refer to themselves as sapiosexuals. Is that still a thing? Oh, it's alive and well. Apparently, intelligence is sexy until a woman actually uses it to question their logic." I smiled, shaking my head. "Sound exhausting. You have no idea." "Florida's not much better," I said, testing the waters. "It's like everyone's on a countdown to their last margarita." She cackled. "Yes, you nailed it. Florida is where fashion dyes and plastic flamingos go to retire. You know what I saw last week? A man in a Hawaiian shirt and Speedos on a golf cart at 8 a.m. Dear God. He waved at me like we were co-conspirators. We both laughed, really laughed, heads tilted back. People probably thought we'd known each other for years. Then things got quieter. She looked out the window for a long moment. "You ever feel like the world moved on while you were stuck in the same room?" I didn't answer right away. "Yes," I said eventually. "After my wife died, time and speed up, it just left me behind." Celia nodded slowly. "I used to feel seen. Now I feel scanned, like people glance at me and decide I'm past the plot line. I see you." Her eyes flicked toward me. "Not scanned. Not past the plot. I see you." She didn't smile, but she didn't look away, either. You know, she whispered, for a man who won a quiet ride, you're surprisingly easy to talk to. I blamed the seating gods. We lapsed into silence, but it wasn't the awkward kind. It was filled with something new, comfortable, curious, as if the bus wasn't carrying two strangers anymore, but two souls with nowhere to be but beside each other. We talked about Paris. I'd visited with my wife before she got sick. I described it to Celia like it was still happening. The cobblestones, the wine, the way my wife's laughter echoed to the Marais. She told me about Venice. We got lost on purpose, she said. My ex and I, once, just once, we bought cannoli from a cart and ended up in a piazza where an old man played cello like it was the last night on earth. That sounds romantic, I said. It was, she replied. And then it wasn't. There was no bitterness in her voice, just memory. You loved him. I loved the version of him that existed when we were 25, but we grew up and he didn't. I nodded. Familiar story. The ride got quieter. She leaned against the window, the late afternoon sun casting gold across her profile. I studied the curve of her mouth, the wrinkle in her brow, the way she didn't hide her age, but carried it like something earned. I didn't know what this was, but I knew it was beginning. Something real, something slow, something we didn't plan. And sometimes, those are the stories worth telling. The bus sighed into its final stop, like an old man giving in to sleep. Outside the window, the world hadn't changed, but something in me had. Celia stood and stretched, groaning softly. 15 hours in one seat, and I still don't hate you. That's got to mean something. I chuckled. You say that like it's rare. It is, she said, looping her bag over her shoulder. I don't usually like people who think in paragraphs. I stood, grabbed her heavier bag without asking. She raised an eyebrow. Let me guess, she said. Chivalry or control? Maybe both, I replied, but also habit. I used to carry everything for my wife. Her face softened just a shade. She was lucky. No, I said, I was. We stepped off the bus together into a surprisingly warm Arizona evening. The terminal smelled like hot pavement and stale pretzels. She stopped just outside the sliding doors. Well, she said, this is the part where we say goodbye, right? I suppose. She didn't move. Neither did I. There's a diner down the block, she said, suddenly looking anywhere but at me. Coffee's terrible. Pie's worse. But the company might help salvage it. I looked at her. She was pretending to be casual, but her fingers were fidgeting with the strap of her bag. I'm game, I said. Let's go ruin our digestion. The diner was all fluorescent lighting and cracked vinyl booths. It looked like it hadn't changed since 1987 and made no apology for it. We sat across from each other, a pot of coffee between us, and two slices of pie that looked like regret on a plate. So, she said, stirring cream into her coffee, was that what you expected? I didn't expect anything, I said. That was the whole point of this trip. Good, she replied, because I'm usually a letdown. I don't buy that for a second. She smirked. That's because I let you sit beside me before I started swearing. I actually like the swearing. You would. You got that quietly amused energy, like you're always waiting for the punchline. And you got that explosive honesty that makes people lean in. Her smile faded just enough to make room for sincerity. I don't know how to be anything else anymore. I wasted too many years watering myself down. Not with me. She looked at me over the rim of her coffee cup. I noticed. We talked for an hour. Then two. About movies we hated. About the first times we cried in public. About what kind of ghosts we believe in. I think memories are ghosts, she said. They haunt differently. Quieter, but just as deep. I nodded. I still wake up some mornings reaching for her. And when my hand lands on the cold side of the bed, I forget for a second. That's a ghost. She reached across the table, resting her fingers lightly over mine. I don't usually reach for people, she said. I don't usually let people reach for me. I noticed. I whispered, The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was necessary, like the hush before a storm you secretly want to feel. Celia leaned back. You ever have a moment where you think, maybe life isn't done surprising me? I stared at her. This is that moment. She let out a breath. Damn it, Martin. Why'd you have to be decent? I smiled. Why'd you have to sit beside me? The waitress came by with the check. Celia took it before I could move. Your chivalry quota is maxed out, she said. Let me feel like a modern woman. We walked out into the night, the air still warm, the stars faint. Where are you staying? I asked. An Airbnb with no Wi-Fi and questionable pillows, she said. Perfect for brooding and writing bad poetry. We stopped at the corner where our paths would split. She looked at me, and I saw the wall she'd been holding up all day, thin, tired, and ready to fall. I don't normally kiss men I've only met twice, she said softly. That makes two of us. She stepped in close, her hand slid into the back of my neck, and kissed me. It wasn't a soft kiss. It was full, certain, like a page being turned and a new one beginning, like a promise you don't say out loud but feel in your spine. When we pulled apart, she whispered, let's not pretend this didn't matter. I couldn't if I tried. She touched my cheek. Let's see what tomorrow feels like. And just like that, she was gone, but not lost, and I was no longer traveling alone. A few minutes after we parted, my phone buzzed. It was a text from her. If you're still in town tomorrow morning, meet me at the park by the fountain. 9 a.m. Don't bring poetry. I smiled. My reply was instant. No promises. But I'll bring coffee. And a tie I don't intend to wear. She replied with a single emoji, a wink. And just like that, we had a plan. The next morning, the sun crept in like it had permission to start over. And so did I. We met again before she left. She was already sitting on the park bench, facing a small fountain that trickled lazily beside her. She wore sunglasses, but her smile was unmistakable. Look who showed up, she said. Couldn't let you leave without returning the favor. I replied. She raised an eyebrow. The favor? I sat down beside her, close but not touching. That kiss. Oh. She took off her sunglasses slowly. You're here to critique it? No, I said. I'm here because I haven't stopped thinking about it. She laughed, soft, amused. You're dangerously sentimental for a man with a stoic face. I'm a retired literature professor, Celia. I survive on metaphors and heartbreak. She shook her head, amused. So? How did it feel? Like the first page of a book I never thought I'd get to read. God, she groaned. You're going to kill me with that poetic nonsense. But it's true, I said. You kissed me like you meant it. She looked down at her hands, then back up. I did. The bench held the weight of two people who had lived, lost, and still hoped. I leave for the retreat this afternoon, she said. A week of painting, breathing, and hopefully not throwing acrylic to the canvas. You nervous? I'm terrified, but it's a good kind of fear. Like shedding old skin, letting something new grow. I nodded. You always this poetic, or is it contagious? Don't flatter yourself. She nudged me. You're not that influential. But she was smiling, and it reached her eyes. I don't know what's next, she said. But for the first time in a long time, I want to make space for someone. My heart stirred in a way I hadn't felt in years. Not in lust, not in longing, but in belonging. I didn't expect to feel anything again, I whispered. And then you sat beside me. She turned toward me slowly. I didn't expect anyone to notice. And then you didn't look away. We didn't kiss then. We just looked. That kind of silence doesn't need to be filled. It fills you. The ride to her retreat was arriving soon. She stood and stretched like she was preparing for another kind of journey, one inside herself. Come walk with me, she asked. I stood. Anywhere. We walked in slow, deliberate steps, like we were trying to memorize the feeling of just being near each other. At the terminal, she turned to face me. The moment held its breath. I know this wasn't supposed to be anything, she said. A bus ride, a diner, A laugh. A kiss. But it was something. I said. She nodded. And if I'm honest, I'd like it to be more than a memory. Then slowly, as she looked into my eyes, smiling, vulnerable, certain, she leaned in. Her hand grazed my jaw, her fingers light, almost trembling. She tilted her head, breath warm against my lips, and our mouths met again. It wasn't a kiss of curiosity. It was a kiss of knowing. Soft but full. Delicate yet devastating. It was a kind of kiss that makes the world blur. That doesn't just meet your lips, but reaches your chest, your stomach, your spine. Her lips move with a rhythm like memory. Like something we hadn't just discovered, but had been trying to remember all along. When we finally parted, our faces lingered close, breath mingling. Her forehead touched mine. Let's not let this be just a bus story, she whispered. It never was, I whispered back, voice nearly cracking. She stepped back slowly, eyes glassy but glowing, her fingertips trailing down my hand like the final note in a song. Then she turned and walked away. I didn't call after her. I just stood there, still buzzing from the electricity of her kiss, the taste of her still warm on my lips, the silence between us no longer empty, but echoing with everything we'd said without words, not in sadness, but in trust, because some connections aren't made for possession. They're made for remembering. And sometimes, when you stop looking for love, it finds a seat beside you.